Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tapestry. I'm Tarun Sakrani.
And I'm Saj Agarwal.
So, welcome and thank you for continuing to listen to us. Today's episode is something that'll whet your appetite, and quite literally, because we're talking about food. Sindhi food, yes. Most people will associate Sindhi food and these are the stereotypes that have lived on, or I've lived through, and I bet many other Sindhis have lived through, is about papad and Sindhi curry. But there is more to it, right, Saj?
A lot more to it. I was just working on this presentation about the Sindhi legacy of the city of Bombay. And one of the things that I want to include there is how if you go to Colaba market, you just have to tell any of the vendors, saee bhaji ka saman dena, and they know exactly what proportion of palak, and they call it shepu, which is sua,
Yep.
and khatta bhaji. So they know how much to give. You don't need to know because everybody, and there's lots of Sindhis who live there. So
correct, yeah.
Lots of people. And that whole area, you get your papad, you get your khicha, vado.
Correct.
Lots of bee, even pabni, if anyone knows what pabni is.
Isn't it the fruit which you tap out or something?
Fresh seeds of the lotus.
Seeds, yeah, correct. That's what it is. I mean, you just have to walk outside the market, cross over to Kailash Prabhat, and there's the guy who stands with his cart, right?
Right. His name is Ashok Mirchandani.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Fresh bee you can buy, and he's always trying to sell you his kacharis and khichas and pappers.
Colorful also. Now they dye their dried things.
But yeah, that's like Sindhi Central for food. So if you're all about it, then, you just need to walk that strip and you find your way around it. But Saz, you were talking about some of your travels.
I found that, of course, you get Sindhi food in Sindhi homes. Very, very few places that you can go out and eat a Sindhi meal at. Do you know any such place?
Besides Kailash Prabhat, no.
Yeah, I think they probably are. Occasionally, something will come up and then I don't know what happens. But there are lots of people who do home catering.
Right.
And of course, Kailash Parbat. But Sindhi homes, that's one of the things that has been retained in almost every family. Even for me, I'm so far removed from being Sindhi actually, because I grew up in the South. But we used to eat saee bhaji at home. And saee bhaji, of course, in case you're listening and you don't know what that is, it's this extremely nutritious mix of greens and dal and vegetables.
The primary ingredient is spinach.
Different, and there are 3 different kinds of spinach, which, as I said, the Colaba market guys know the proportions.
Exactly.
And you eat it with rice. And of course, potatoes, because potato is something every Sindhi loves. I mean, I don't know lots of people who don't like potatoes anywhere in the world anyway, but I think potato is very central to Sindhi food, and tikkis. But this business with the saee bhaji, I never liked it when I was a kid. I didn't like the bee. I mean, bee, of course, in Tamil Nadu, it's not something that you get regularly. I don't know where. Once in a while, my mom would get it. I don't know from where. It was really a delicacy. I don't know from where she got it. She probably had somebody who felt sorry for her sending it or something like that. And my brother liked it. And that was so annoying to me.
But just to be clear, right? Like bee, for those of you wondering, it's not the insect we're talking about. We're talking about the lotus stem, actually.
Biya.
Yep, biya.
I would be like, please, I don't want to eat bark and roots. And my brother would be like, give me more. And I used to find that awfully annoying. But even with the saee bhaji, my mother would have to threaten violence before I would be convinced it was good for health. But yeah, funnily enough, I cook it. And my kids, when they were growing up, they liked it. And they're not even Sindhi, they're so far removed from being Sindhi, but they loved it.
That's amazing. I mean, if you think about it, like the only places I've eaten bee are in a Sindhi house, so in our house growing up. And then when you go to a Chinese restaurant, you get the fried lotus stem. So that's literally the only 2 places I've actually eaten it.
Nowadays, that's very popular in India. Crunchy honey, sesame, lotus root. You do get traditional Sindhi homes will have a wide range of other things also. And one of the experiences, really remarkable experiences I had was when I went to Chile. I went to Chile as the guest of the Moinani family because I was writing their family history. And I was interviewing people from their family, wherever they lived, which was in various places.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so kind to me. They looked after me so well, you know. So I went to Chile and I could have just done my interviews in Santiago where they lived.
Right.
But they traveled with me.
Oh, amazing.
They took me to Iquique and to Arenas. I actually ate more mirchi pakoras in Chile than pretty much eaten in all those years before.
So chili pakoras in Chile, how cool is that?
Yeah. And the reason, of course, is because I had so many very hospitable Sindhi hosts, and which of course is special, right? You make that for your special guests.
You've never met an inhospitable Sindhi host, I'm sure, but
Absolutely not. We have this joke in Pune where I live that if you visit somebody's home, they'll be like, "Jeevan alit kai? Jeevan alit na?" So in a Sindhi home, of course, the bare minimum is papad pani.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
But coming back to Chile, in Iquique, there were two meals that I had, which were really amazing. One was at a Chinese restaurant in Iquique. And I'm not sure whether that was an Indian Chinese restaurant. I don't think so.
Right.
But we had samosas for the dinner that we had there.
Okay.
Because the good Sindhi people who patronized that restaurant had taught the chef how to make samosas. And they also told me that they taught the chef to make koki. We didn't order koki that day, but they said,
wow,
Chinese restaurant where you can get samosas and koki.
Oh my God.
And so the other thing is that we had a book club meeting at someone's home in Iquique. And of course, that was very, very exciting for me as a writer because it was about my book and they all had a copy. But then there was a potluck after the book club meeting. And one of the things that was served was gado-gado. No, where else but in Chile would you get gado-gado, right? Because that's an Indonesian dish. And the lady who brought it, her in-laws were from Indonesia. They loved Indonesian food. I mean, who doesn't love Indonesian food? But then because they were from there, they cooked with Indonesian spices and they loved Indonesian food. And there we were eating gado-gado in Chile. So what I'm saying is that though Sindhi food is something that, Sindhi homes still have, there's this huge ethnic diversity in Sindhi homes. Like your place, what's the story?
Growing up, we did all of this stuff. So we would try all kinds of cuisine. Gado-gado was a very famous dish because my Nana's brother used to live there. So somehow when we visited or when they visited, the recipe came back. It became common in their household, so carried over to ours. So we would eat gado-gado, and I would tell my friends gado-gado, and they're like, "Huh? What?" So is that Sindhi? It's like, no, actually, it's not. But it sort of fits into our Sindhi household cuisine. But the diversity was there. What I'd like to tell you is Sindhi curry, another famous thing. So whenever we had lunches or dinners or whenever my friends came over, I would always ask them, like, what do you want to eat? And the one thing they would say was Sindhi curry. Just ask your mom to make Sindhi curry and we don't want anything else.
Everybody loves.
And for a Sindhi boy growing up and in that house, I was like, are you sure Sindhi curry? Really? They're like, dude, you don't know. Like, that's what we want. Okay, fine. So Sindhi curry and aloo tikki as it used to be.
Yeah.
Now, wind forward like 20 plus years on, I'm married. My wife is here and she's from the Philippines. One thing we cook, well, she cooks a lot, but the one thing we've carried over consistently is Sindhi curry. And, I honestly cannot even pretend that I cook a good Sindhi curry. She is the expert at it now. And I have to say that she's almost like replicated my mom's recipe almost exactly. And it's amazing. So there's no loss of continuity there.
That's fantastic. But Tarun, is that actually a Sindhi boy thing that you don't cook and your wife cooks?
No, I actually cook everything. I can cook everything. I mean, I'm not saying I'm good, but I'll do it all. But no, I can cook most things. I can, I'm all right. I've got my hands dirty in the kitchen, literally and metaphorically. So I'm all right there. But yeah, comparatively, my wife's the better cook, so I usually defer to her, and I'm happy to enjoy the flavors that come out of her hands.
Nice. So traditionally, I think in the old days, at least, the man would cook. I mean, the man would never cook.
Correct.
And the gender roles were so they were divided. I mean, men did cook. It's not like they didn't. I've seen men even in the past. I've heard elderly women telling me that my father was a great cook. It's not like they didn't, but it wasn't a done thing.
Yep. And we've talked a bit about the Sindh workies and stuff, but they had to almost do their own cooking in many ways, right? So they almost had to learn. And both my granddads, therefore, were fairly decent cooks.
Wow.
My dad's dad, and I'm not joking, he used to cook, and I think he had a restaurant at one point in time. And the one thing that he brought out of that restaurant, it's not cooking, but his specialty, he called it, was a banana split.
Wow.
So on Sunday afternoons, if he was in the mood, we would be feasting on this like amazing banana split that Dada would make, and it was there for everybody. But he was a proper foodie.
What a beautiful memory.
Yeah, a sweet memory, yes, call it.
And also, this festive thing, and I think banana split is so. It's something which is not Indian. It's something which I think in those days would have been a real delicacy, something special.
Yeah.
And, I think that's so symbolic of the way Sindhis like to eat. You want to have something in your meal which is international and which is diverse. And I think.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I don't even see banana splits on menus these
days.
So
it must have 70s or 80s, right?
80s probably.
Right. So today we have a very special guest, and that's Sapna Ajwani. And welcome, Sapna, to the Tapestry Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sapna, let's start by telling our listeners a little about you.
Hi, I'm Sapna, and I live in London now. I'm from Bombay. I grew up in Bombay. I went to university in Bombay, and I got into accounting. So I'm a chartered accountant, actually. I started a career in banking and financial services, and that brought me to Shores of Far, which is places in Germany and London. About after 17 or 18 years in banking, I decided I must do something about telling the world about Sindhi food.
Wow.
Amazing.
And I started hosting supper clubs, and one thing led to another, and here I am.
Okay, wait. So you said you started hosting supper clubs.
That's right, yeah.
So can you tell us about the first supper club? Where was it, and what did you serve?
So the first supper club was held at a cafe in the city of London. There's a cafe there which I sort of rented, and then I used to always cook for myself, right? Because I love home food, and home food for me is Sindhi food.
Right.
And there are particular dishes which I would keep cooking quite often. So I just moved to London that time, getting to know people, and my friendships with people are always over food, So I invited this friend of mine, and I just got to know her, and she said, oh, let's go out to eat. I said, no, why don't you come over? I'll cook some food. So I'm talking about 2006. So it was not that common actually in the UK to, cook food and invite friends over, really, because not many people did a lot of cooking, and it's a big hassle. Whereas for me, it was an everyday affair, right? So I told her, come over, I'll cook some simple home food. And I just cooked a few dishes, one of which was this dish, hurbe tumvari machi, which is fenugreek garlic fish.
And what else?
And I made bhariyal bindu, so stuffed okra with like a herb paste.
Wow.
And I made simple, moong lentils. We call it piri dal. So, the Sindhi thing of piri, not pili, and just these three things. And she just couldn't stop eating it. She just couldn't stop eating. And she said, she was like very embarrassed. She's like, do you have any food left over? Can I take it home?
And Sapna, just for our audience, this wasn't another Sindhi person, right? Or was
No,
it?
no, this is this friend of mine. She's a Taiwanese American. So yeah. So jumping back into what I cooked at the supper club were these dishes basically, and I also cooked like a green cardamom cauliflower, which is it's a dish from basically from Hyderabad. So this is a very typical the use of green cardamom. I think that's the most popular spice, at least for people from that region, from the town of Hyderabad.
Right.
Because there are so many dishes that we would make, like any dish. You can think of any dish. There's a fish with a green cardamom. There's cauliflower with green. There's karela with green cardamom. So
my grandmom used to make mutton with nothing except cardamom and milk.
I was just going to say that mutton and cardamom. That's
yeah.
we've grown up with.
But and milk, and that's it. Just those three things, and that was.
So yeah, so pote mein gosht. So that is pota is green cardamom in Sindhi. So I made that, and I made gulabi tikki, which is basically stuffed potato patty with lentils. And then I made two kinds. One was with lentils for the vegetarians, and one was with keema. And then there's fish. There were these two kinds of vegetables. I don't think I made any lentils, and rice, and I made gajar halwa. So that was a menu for that supper club. So at that supper club, I met this gentleman. He was like asking me, so, I came for the supper club because, my great-grandfather was in Sindh. So I said, where are you from? Are you Sindhi? He's saying, no, I'm actually of Goan heritage. My great-grandfather went to Sindh to work for the British Rail. And I found that so interesting because I had no idea that there were Goans in Sindh, at that time, and they went there to build the railways. So then I was thinking, we use a lot of kokum in our cooking. Did that come from Goa? Because it's a fruit which is endemic to the Western Ghats. There's no other way it could have come there, right? Through some trade or somebody got it, and it found its way into some markets. And because Sindhis, we love our sourness in all our food, right? A lot of our food is very sour, and it's got different kinds of sourness coming from different elements.
So yeah, it started in this really fun way. And then, of course, it continued in a fun way, but very differently because you started researching and you actually went to Sindh to find out more.
I always wanted to write a book, right? And I said, I got very interested when the gentleman started talking about the Goan connection, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But I said, if I just write without actually going to Sindh and finding out about what people are eating there, what the local ingredients are. And honestly, I mean, we think of Sindh or many regions of India and actually of the world as a monolith, right? But the reality is there's so much diversity. Like, every corner that you turn, things will be different, right? Within like 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers, things will be completely different. So sitting over here in my little place by just talking to people, and thanks to Saz, I got connected to so many people. She connected me to so many people in Sindh and in India also, and like all over the world to talk to them. When I used to host my supper club, then obviously when I intro the food to them, it's not just about the food, right? Food is the main idea, but it's also to tell people about Sindh. What is Sindh?
Right.
What does it mean? Who are the Sindhis, and what happened? Like nobody knows that here. And most of my guests are actually basically non-Indian origin people, right? Many of them. And they've been born and brought up here. So they don't know at all about these things. So, I always tell them, see, look at us, look at my family, look at people like us. We left our land and we came. And look at what we've done. We've only contributed, right? The places we went to, we've enriched those places, right? Imagine if they were not there. In fact, this was the interesting thing now going back to my trip, is when you talk to people in Sindh and they just rue the fact that we left. Right? They were like, wish you had stayed back. We would have been such a prosperous nation. So that's why supper clubs are very interesting as opposed to going to a normal restaurant. Because normal restaurant, you'll just go, right? You'll just order some food and sit down. That's it, But the interesting part, so this is the thing, so I grew up, I am a carnivore, and I'm very unashamed to say that, with all the veganuary and everything happening. I think I've been sort of vegetarian for 1 month in my life when I was in college, and I said, never doing it. But what I find, I don't know, strange, and I don't know, you should also tell me, is the number of Sindhis who've given up meat and fish, right?
I think it's probably a global trend, but I think you're right. I also find that really strange. It's been going on for a while. Because in Sindh, I think everybody, a majority were meat eaters, fish eaters. Fish was really a delicacy, the pallo. Did you eat any of that, the pallo, when you went?
So unfortunately, the time that I went was not the time season for palla. So in fact, I remember I was in Al Manzar, which is this very famous restaurant, which is right on the banks. It's near Kotri Barrage. It's right on that canal. They showed me one pallo, but it was like, I would not eat it. It had no meat in it because it was caught in thatta. They say this is palla from thatta. So, which is like, it's not been able to swim up, right?
Right.
And it's been caught like early in the season. But that's the unfortunate part with palla. What they were telling me is that a lot of palla that you get there comes from Iran now, because they hardly catch anything, because there's not enough water in the Indus, which flows down because of all the dams that they have built.
Right.
The poor palla's habitat is completely destroyed.
Just to pause, I don't think most people will probably be aware what the palla is. If they're Sindhi or grew up in a Sindhi household, they'll know it. But if it's anybody else,
yeah. So palla belongs to the same family as the herring, and it's an estuarian fish. So it's a fish that swims up to spawn. And that's when it's at its most delicious, and which is also very sad, because when we catch the fish, it is found with the egg sac in it. And that egg sac is such a delicacy, right, in our cuisine. But then after it spawns, it swims back into the ocean.
But it's backwards, right?
Yeah, I mean, supposedly, all these myths that we hear about.
Because it doesn't want to turn its back on the shrine of Zinda.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, but a fish that comes closest to it will be the salmon. A wild salmon is a similar fish,
which also swims upstream against the current.
And another fish, which sort of in America is the shad, which is a similar kind of fish. I think in India there is another fish which is I'm forgetting the name. No, hilsa and palla is the same. It's the same fish. Okay. So hilsa is what the Bengalis call palla, ilish, right? Ilish mash. Which brings me to Instagram and the story about going to Sindh. So when I post about Sindhi food, I always write Sindhi, and Sindhi food and Sindhi hashtag Sindhi food in London. So I had this girl who started following me from Sindh. She's like, you always hashtag Sindh. Are you from Sindh? Are you from Sindh? Have you? So I said, I'm not from Sindh, but my father is from Sindh, and both parts of my family are from Sindh. Oh, so when did you leave? I said, so I told her the story, like our family left, after the partition and all that. And then she said, have you ever been to Sindh? I said, no, I've never been to Sindh, but I would love to. So she's like, if you ever want to visit Sindh, let me know and I will help organize your trip.
Wow.
Wow.
This was in early 2020.
Bad timing.
I know, but who knew, right?
Nobody knew, yeah.
And this is like, I think it was the second week of February when I got my visa.
Right.
And then this pandemic was like, just blowing up, right? So I was like, what do I do? I said, you know what? If I don't go now, and it was a 6-month validity, the visa, short. Right? So I had to go. I said, I'm not going in the summer, right? It's August. So then I said, okay, so I'm going. I told my friend, you know what? I got my visa. We quickly planned the itinerary. And she gave, like, whatever was needed was done. And I just sat on the plane and I went. And then, of course, my trip started from there, from Karachi. And then I met a lot of friends whom actually Saaz introduced me to. They invited me home for lunches and dinners.
Did you find the food was different to what you were used to?
In the big cities, obviously big city food. I mean, even if you were to look at Mumbai, right? So Sindhis in Mumbai, their eating habits have changed, right? People's palates change. And Sindhis like to become these global citizens, right? Oh, I'm eating a pasta and I'm eating, which is of course Sindhi food too, right? We all know. But actually, when you go to people's homes, the food that you eat is still home cooked food. And there are so many dishes, when I went to Mushtaq Bhai's home. His chef is a Sindhi, and they are from, I think he's from Tando Mohammed Khan, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so his chef had made mooli, mooriye jo siro, which I'd never heard of in my life.
Wow.
I said, how can you make mooriye jo siro? Like moori is like, it's got this obnoxious smell. But oh my God, I was gobsmacked. Like
so how is
completely.
it made?
It's basically, you have to like boil the mooli and take all that sort of smell and bitterness out and cook it with lots of cream and cardamom. Cook it with cream and cardamom. And it's like the most delicious thing. And to me, the texture of the mooli is better than having gajar halwa, gajunjo halwa. I need it. Then they had made jingan jo pula,
Nice.
which was made with lots of dill in it, which is again another ingredient so typical to Hyderabad and southern Sindh,
Right.
And through my friend, actually, and this is the thing about Sindhi food. Sindhi food is not obviously about the people who left Sindh, like people like our families who left Sindh and left, and the Hindus, right? It's about everyone who has called Sindh home, right? You are a Sindhi if you think of Sindh as your home, right? And these people have been passing through Sindh because we were at such a vantage point, right? We were the gateway to India. I mean, if you think about it, we had every person that you hear about in history, like Ibn Battuta, right? Or Al-Biruni, all went through Sindh and they've all written about Sindh. They've all talked about Sindh, right? So everyone has been coming through Sindh and settling over there. My whole plan was to spend 1-2 nights in Thatta because I absolutely love Thatta. It's like, to me, it's like one of the most stunning places that I've seen because it has so much history and it's so important to us because it was the capital of Sindh for like so many years. And it has so many interesting monuments. Just walking around Thatta is like, you can, appreciate the history of Sindh and the changes it must have gone through, right? Like over the ages. But then my plan was also to go to Mithi, which is like on the border with Kutch. And my friend insisted I must go to Mithi because Mithi is the mayor of Mithi is a Hindu and it's a majority Hindu town.
It is,
and their food is exactly like the ingredients that you have there is exactly like the ingredients that you get on the other side of the border in Rajasthan.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, things like gheyar, kumat, sangri.
Right.
These are these dry desert vegetables. Sangri, and so those are the same things that you eat there, right? Then chibar, which is mitera. You must have eaten dry mitera, right? So if you're from Hyderabad and south and close to the border, everyone would make these vegetables. Like mitera is a very important vegetable for Sindhis, right? Because on Diwali, you actually offer it in the hatri. You put it in the hatri. So, and that is also cooked as a main vegetable on Diwali, which is the Satbaju.
Right, okay.
The seven vegetables.
Seven vegetables.
And this is like an important ingredient in the 7. I'll send you a photograph of that, what it looks like. This, for the first time when I was in Bombay, I actually ate it fresh. My aunt got it for me from Rajasthan. Mitera is like a sour cucumber, like sourish cucumber. It is called kachri. In Rajasthani, it's called kachri. And that kachri powder is used as a tenderizer for meat.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why all of it just disappears from the market because it has other uses. Funnily enough, Aini Akbari actually mentions about this fruit, sort of refers it to as a small melon that grows in the desert. So Aini Akbari has got these 5-6 different parts, right? And one of them is on the Sarkar of Thatta. And what was being produced there. So they talk about there's this fish which so the people of the region eat a lot of rice, they eat a lot of fish, and it's a very abundant region. And then they talk about this melon that grows in the desert. So some of the ingredients that we have in our cuisine, like our foods, are actually pretty much unchanged if you actually think about it, for like so many years.
So when you went in and you traveled to all these places, was there a sense of familiarity as well as you went through it?
Yeah, I mean, so I cannot say that it's the same dish I would have eaten at home. They're different, but the flavors are all the same, right? Because of the ingredients. Like for me, the flavor of dill, suwa.
Right.
Suo is is the same. Like the flavor of hurbo, methi is the same. Like when I went to at Al Manzar that we were talking about, they made this cook pallo, where they put this masala on top and they grill the fish or steam the fish, which is sort of again, home food. And they were actually so nice to me over there at Al Manzar. The owner of the restaurant, he spent like 1 hour telling me all about the fish and how they cook it in different ways. They were so generous. Everyone was so generous. It was just unbelievable. All my friends.
New recipe for your supper club.
I know. So anyway, and then my friend who sponsored my visa. So she is the great granddaughter of Saint GMC. So, I don't know how, I mean, I think I must have done something right in my previous life that I got connected with such nice people, right? They invited me home, they welcomed me. And every time I left, I got so many gifts. You wouldn't believe it. When I left from Lahore, I had to get another bag because my bag broke. I couldn't carry so many things. So in my friend's home Sun Village, where Sai GM Saeed is from, in the morning they would make, like my grandfather. So he is a big foodie. I think I've got my foodie gene from him because my aunts tell me that, he wanted to eat like magas and jera and buki and all for breakfast, because normally offal was eaten in the mornings, because that was a thing which would go bad the first, right? So I told them, I wanted to eat magas actually, but they could not find magas. So they made jera for me for breakfast.
So and those listening again, magas is brain, by the way.
Yeah. Goat or lamb brain.
Yeah, goat brain.
And jera?
Jera is liver.
Liver. Sorry, yeah, jera is liver.
So then they made jera for me and fish. Every day I used to eat dambro, which is basically what the Bengalis call rohu. And what we Sindhis, we have co-opted the fish, right, into our, we call it Sindhi machi.
Okay.
Yeah, we decided that fish belongs to Sindh and like nowhere else. This is funny, actually. This is my friend Muni's mom was telling me when I was asking her about the food and all and how she makes it. So she was telling me that her husband always laughs. And she was like, did you ask the fish before that she's being like co-opted into becoming a Sindhi machi? But what was the most beautiful part about being in Sindh is hearing Sindhi being spoken by everyone and being able to converse in Sindhi with everybody.
Right.
But that was like amazing, eating fish for breakfast, which sort of continued when I went to Larkano also, where my host would again, they would make machi like for breakfast. I was like, this is like the most luxurious breakfast in this world, right? And then they would make, there was another thing, which is mashed turnips, which at least in my family, we used to never make. I'd never eaten. But the best thing, the best produce of that region is beer. Oh my God, I have never eaten beer so tasty. Which is lotus stem, right?
Lotus stem, right.
Which in the West, it's called lotus root for some reason.
Yeah.
I have never eaten such tasty beer. Oh my God.
How was it cooked? It wasn't fried, right? It's cooked in a sauce?
No. I mean, in Sindhi cuisine, we don't fry.
We never fry the beef.
It's only if it's kachri, na? So if you dry the vegetables, so Sindhi food is all about flavor and texture, right? Everything that we eat, we need some crackling with it, like dal pakwan, right? You want the dal and you want the crispy pakwan,
crunchy,
with it, right?
Yeah.
Or if you eat, sweet and savory, or you want your papad with it, which gives you that crunch, right? So, but they were making it in different ways. But the most popular way to make it is which sort of many people in actually India have forgotten. which is the leaves of the green chana, right?
Okay.
Uh, which is basically like in Hindi would call it channe ka saag, right? So palli. In Sindhi it's called palli. So that palli is made with this beer, and palli is also made with fish. So that is another thing that I actually ate in Larkano, right? So this food very much exists. You know, you have to go into the smaller towns, you have to go to people's homes and eat that food. In fact, I'm telling you, I hardly ate outside because I feel the food outside in restaurants has become very generic. And then there's this certain sort of, I almost feel obsession with eating this kadahi everywhere, you know. All the good food that I had was in people's homes.
Wow. Lovely.
Amazing.
So, and then there's another dish where my host in Larkano, his daughter actually made acho bod, which is basically like, you know how Rajasthanis make this safed mas, which is made with either chicken or mutton.
Mutton usually, right?
Which is goat.
It's not lamb. Yeah.
It's not then older lamb. So it's not the older sheep. It's basically a goat meat, which we call also mutton in India. It's only made with khada garam masala, which is like spices, whole spices. And there is no red chili, nothing used in it. No red chili, no green chili, nothing. It's just with spices and with a little bit of cream and yogurt.
Okay.
So that was another super interesting dish that I ate over there. So, you know, there's a lot of different kinds of flavors that I came across. But the most interesting thing through this whole research has been also, you know, when my friend's brother told me to speak to his sister. And she told me about her family who came like at the time when, you know, there was the Arab invasion, Islamic conquest of Sindh. They came fleeing, you know, persecution and settled down in Thatta. So they are actually from Shiraz and Iran. The recipes she's given me are just absolutely amazing, you know, like I've never come across this.
Give us an example.
So one of the dishes is shola mutton, which is also eaten in Afghanistan, by the way. It's the border of Afghanistan and it's like a porridge of rice and meat with lots of dill in it, lots of suo. Yeah, but it's absolutely delicious. Very simple dish, has very few ingredients in it, like no like garam masala, nothing. Good quality meat, rice, and red rice if you can get it, because red rice is the rice of Sindh, right? It's so typical. It's again another ingredient. Unfortunately, we do not get very easily. I mean, in India, you can get it from in southern India, in Kerala.
And it tastes the same?
No, it's slightly different taste, but it's almost the same. And also red rice flour, which is again very typical rice flour from Thatta. Rice actually was the biggest grain crop grown, more than anything else. And I think that will have been the case forever because of this annual inundation which was taking place, especially in southern Sindh. So depending on where you are, so northern Sindh they also eat a lot of rice and wheat both, but white rice. Southern Sindh they eat a lot of red rice and rice flour made from red rice. What I also forgot to mention was, so I met Kamleshwar Lohana, and he very kindly organized a meeting with somebody whom he knew through his network and colleague. She then cooked for me the typical food that is eaten in mithai. That's made with this vegetable chibbar. And you know what was the most interesting thing that I found? She said, you know, there's this feeling, right? You know, that if you are Hindu, you eat vegetables. If you're Muslim, you eat a lot of meat. I don't think it is about that. It is about what is available to you, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
So she was telling me that in that region of Sindh, there's hardly any livestock. You know, so eating livestock, any meat is a luxury, right?
Right.
So what everybody eats, irrespective of what your religion is, doesn't matter, is mainly fresh vegetables of the season and local herbs, right? So whatever is locally available, locally foraged, meat will be cooked on a special occasion. Or, you know, if it's Bakri Eid, you know, they'll slaughter a goat and they'll distribute it to everybody. But it's a luxury, it's a one-off. Otherwise, she cooked all vegetarian food with, red rice rotis and this chibbar with a mitera with, like a yogurt sauce, which is called rabdo. They do not have access to too many other things, right? It's a dry region. It's almost like desert, right? So they use a lot of yogurt in their cooking, which is also very similar, like if you see Rajasthan, they also use a lot of yogurt in all their sauce bases. And the only difference between sort of Hindu cooking and Muslim cooking would be the use of garlic. Many Hindus do not use garlic, right? Like my husband's family. So they don't eat onion and garlic, right? And many people in Rajasthan also don't eat onion and garlic. So they use a lot of garlic and they do not. They use more hing in their cooking. So, so that is sort of the only difference. Otherwise, the dish is the same. They're cooking, they're all eating vegetarian food. And this is the other interesting thing that I came across in my research, where one of these British explorers has written about, even if you're a Brahmin in Sindh, you would not stop yourself from eating a bit of fish, which is sort of true, for all the coastal regions of India, if you see. Like, or even the Kashmiri Brahmins, or if you see
Bengal
will be like that.
And Saraswat Brahmins of Goa, and they would all eat fish. They would not eat meat.
Did you go north from Larkana?
I went, I based myself in Larkano, and then I traveled around. I went to my uncle's village, which is Banguldero. Yeah, Harnam and Javarankal's, Banguldero. I went to their old home and I met all the people over there.
And just by a coincidence, that's also my uncle.
Ah, okay.
Mom's cousin, completely, one of those lovely quirks of fate.
I know, exactly.
Amazing.
So when I went into their sort of village and I was chatting to them, there were these ladies, they were sitting like on a charpai and they were cleaning methi, kurbo. And then I was looking at them and thinking about our family back home, right? When every morning, we would get lots of different kinds of herbs. Like, I don't know about you guys, I'm sure it's the same thing. Like in our home, we don't have herbs, we cannot cook. I remember one day my aunt or my mom, I can't remember who, and she was like, oh, we don't have any, ajita kuch bhi aaye na ghar mein, dhana na, and we don't have any like dhania, fresh dhania. How am I going to cook today? It's like, So it's very typical. So they're all sitting and cleaning. And that like really reminded me, like, oh, this is just like home, this is like, they're doing the same thing. They're cleaning methi, and then I was asking them, what are you going to make with it? And then they were cleaning karelo. Then they told me like they put chana dal in the karela or they put keema in the karela. So you see the food is the same. There's no difference, right? And the flavors are also the same, right? And I don't think really anything has changed. As long as you stay away from the big cities like Karachi, in Hyderabad again, I went to a restaurant to eat. It was not very interesting. And but actually in Karachi, there's a Sindhi restaurant. It's called Cafe Sindh, where I went and ate at, which my friend took me to. Mm-hmm. And there they are trying to promote Sindhi food, so you get beer, you get pallo, you get Sindhi machi.
Brilliant.
So you get seala machi. So I think everyone is trying to now revive, their culture. And, there are many people in Sindh who and a lot of young people actually, who get very fascinated when I post about Sindh. They're like, oh, this is like, home food, we're feeling so hungry. And like, nobody cooks like that.
Will raise my hand as one of those people.
Yeah. But, before we go, we want to hear all about your book.
So the name of the book is Sindh Recipes and Stories from a Forgotten Land.
Lovely.
I think I have more than 150 recipes. And there were more than 200 or something like that.
Wow.
I actually had to cut down very, sadly.
That's not done. We want all the recipes.
I know. I wish I could do that.
Yeah, make it 2 books.
Send it to us separately. We'll keep the remaining 50. It's fine.
So I've had to really pick and choose. But the beauty of Sindhi cuisine is, and this is what I actually want to bring out, what is different about Sindhi cuisine? What makes us different? And I personally think it is all the influences that we've had over the ages, right? From different people who have come and gone, right? And I think a big influence has come from the Persians, the Iranians, the love of herbs in our cooking. Like, so, the first time one of our friends invited us home to eat. So he made this dish called gourmet sabzi. Gourmet sabzi is like a dish made of multiple herbs like fenugreek, dill, and lots of other things. And it tasted a lot like this thume methi wali machi. And then I found out in Iran, in southern Iran, they have a dish called galie mahi. Galie mahi is exactly thume methi wali machi.
Wow. Okay.
Exactly the same. There may be slight differences. Maybe they don't have as much green chili,
Of course.
or and they add tamarind. We now add tomatoes. Maybe once upon a time we were also adding tamarind because tomatoes are very new to us, right?
Right.
Then the other thing that I saw is, I don't know about you, but like in our home, when we cook the rice, we make sure it catches the bottom.
Yes,
So we
I
can
was going to ask you that. That's an Irani influence, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so,
That's
so.
rice at the bottom.
So now who gave it to whom? We don't know that.
We
So.
don't. But I know that's.
It doesn't matter. It's such a lovely.
Fight for that, yeah.
So it doesn't matter. It's food, right? We can all say,
Correct.
it's our food. And we are probably the only people, and again, I may be wrong on this, who add salt and oil to our rice. Like in my home, I cannot ever remember not cooking rice with oil and salt. Like it's.
Yeah.
That's so funny because I do that. I can't cook rice without a bit of oil and a bit of salt.
Exactly, but it's not common. It's not a common thing. Most people I knew.
I just assumed everybody does it.
No, they would just boil the rice.
When I told my wife we do that, she said, "You're out of your mind." Like, it's normal. She's like, "No, it's not normal."
Oh, it's so nice to know, Sapna. That was really like a gift.
So I was like, there's so many similarities, or for instance, when I was in Istanbul, when we were walking in these back streets of Istiklal, there's one of the streets, I saw lokum, what the Turkish called lokum, right? And I saw this sweet and I said, this is like Sindhi halwa, that the...
the chewy one.
Yeah. And it's not those little things that you get in the shops here, it's like proper Sindhi halwa, like... with lots of pista and all green and red color and all, and taste exactly the same.
Wow.
Like my nana used to call it Sindhi chewing gum.
Yeah, exactly. So, it just makes you think, that we've had so many influences from so many people, So, so the book has a lot, it's about my family's, move to India. It's got about the history of Sindh, my own foray into this food world, why I got into it. And it also has a lot of detail on ingredients because we've got so many ingredients, right? And so on, how to prepare okra, how to buy good okra, how to buy good karela, how do you prep lotus stem. It's also about, I think Ayurveda has had a big influence on our cooking. My mother would tell us things like drink a glass of warm water after you eat your food. Or this whole thing about eating a papad, as soon as you come from outside, don't drink a glass of water, eat some papad because it's got this black pepper in it, right?
Oh, okay. And what's the thing on milk and fish?
Yeah, so this is the thing in Ayurveda, this is what it says, don't have anything milky after eating fish.
Okay.
So I used to think these are all old wives' tales, like what is all this? Don't drink milk.
But it is an Ayurveda tenet, yeah?
Exactly. So if you actually read the Charaka Samhita, it has all these things. So I was just thinking about these things. I said, does it have any correlation? And what was the other interesting thing that I found? That one of the holy trinity of Ayurveda, Vagyabhatta, he was born in Sindh in the 6th century. So it's all been a very interesting process, So in the book, I've sort of written about that, and written about the herbs that we use, the spices that we use, why we use them, how to use the spices. I've tried to summarize the history with a reflection of how maybe it influenced us, including the time of the British, how possibly, we got into, making TL Dabroti or our likeness for whiskey. Because of maybe it was a Murray distillery, which opened, I don't know. And also macaroni. Where did macaroni come from? Did the British bring it?
Might just be the Sindhwarkis who brought it, right?
Or the Sindhwarkis got it, so it's all very interesting to, so I've written about all that. And of course, there's these more than 100 recipes. So
really looking forward to buying my copy, Sapna. Can't wait.
Fingers crossed.
I have had such a fantastic conversation with you, learned so many things, and loved the way you summed up, the tastes and the essential ingredients. That was just fantastic. I mean, it sounds like common sense, but obviously there's a lot of deep thought that's gone into it. Very, very impressive. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
think
you
for
having
all
me.
our listeners, just remember what Sapna said is basically when you get invited to a Sindhi's household, it's not just about the papad. There is more to it.
Yeah.
So definitely enjoy the whole experience. And in addition to the book, Sapna, I'm waiting for the supper club to start up. So I look forward to seeing you there in London sometime.
Me too.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Dal pakwan, asanjo Sindhi kadi, asanji chula double, asanje Sindhi achi shana. Sindhi ayam, Sindhi chandam, Sindhi chila.